wants to be king!
Welcome to the War Room. Today I want to give a shout out to my man, Son of the Republic. He sent me a video link of one of CRP's videos, and the overall gist of that video was that the direction that the Western civilization was headed was very dark and treacherous, and that if one had the means to do so, that he should exfil from America and go to a poorer country that didn't have the technology and the ability to become the social credit score state. And I agree with 99% of what he said in that video. And the part that I don't agree with is running away from my country, because this is my country. This is where I was born, and this is where, if God sees that it's to be such, this is where I'll die defending what I believe to be my rights. But in watching that video, and it goes along with some of the things that I've said for a long time, it made me think about a conversation that I had with one of my athletes when he was in college. He had started in a Division II college and eventually earned a scholarship to a D1 school. And when he went to that school, he changed a lot. And I didn't really understand what it was that had happened to him, but he had basically been socialized. And one of the last conversations that we had was about what we're seeing today globally, what's going on right now in our world, not just our country. And I was telling him, some sort of way they're going to try to lock everything down and create a one world government. This NWO thing is legit, and it's gonna be a situation that sucks. And at one point in time, he could see that, but then when he went to Midwestern, he changed, and during this conversation, he was completely brainwashed with the way that the social order worked and where we were. And the thing that he said was a thing that a lot of people say is, that could never happen here. And that's something that I said to my grandmother when she opened my eyes to that when I was a child, 14, 15 years old. And I've always kept that in the back of my mind, and I've always kept my finger on the pulse of the country and paid attention to what was going on behind the scenes of what we were seeing on the stage. And we are exactly where I was, talking to him about, and still he thinks that the Resident Evil's legit. He runs around with diaper on his face, and it's really sad. It's sad to see this guy play this role, because he was one of my guys. He was one of my assets in my old gym, and to see him turn into this social justice warrior and start speaking victimhood and basically bending the knee to the social structure of the regime that we see today, it was just a sad occurrence. But as I watch this unfold, and I listen and have discourse with the guys that I communicate with off of this platform, many of them have the mindset and the belief that there's nothing that we can do about these things, and it's fated to happen and all this. And I guess I'm just a stubborn American dummy, because I don't believe that. I don't believe that we're ever just fated to let evil do what it wants to do. And I 100% believe that the only way that can happen is if good, strong men sit back and allow it. And that's what we've done for a long time. See, our generation, my generation, the MTV generation, we have been brainwashed and brought into this me. And our children's children are the epitome of everything that went wrong in our society. this Instagram, Facebook, thought trap culture that we have, where everybody's manipulating their pictures and their personalities and everything about themselves, desperately trying to get the attention of strangers, looking for validation from people who are seeking validation from people. It's just a disgusting loop. But when you look at what we've gotten a culture that's no longer cohesive. We're no longer one nation under anything. It's just everyone's got their own truth. Everyone's got their own little bubble where they're the center of the universe. And now the most afflicted, deranged people are being vaulted to the level of deities, to where we're all supposed to understand their mental handicap and bow and bend our culture to this. And people are silent, muzzled, as if it's something that's just supposed to come to pass. And the only way that these things can happen, the only way that these things can be taught to our children, to be allowed to destroy our children's mind when they're the most malleable and impressionable, is for men to not say anything, to leave it up to the women to have this fight. Again, it is up to the men to step forward and save our children. Now, a lot of people will say, I don't have kids, so it's not my fault, it's not my problem, it's not my dog, not my fight. And I get that to a certain degree. But when I hear people take that stance, it makes me think about a quote that I read from a Lutheran pastor, I believe, from Germany, World War II, when the man with the funny mustache decided that it was time to turn on his war machine. And I believe his name was Martin Niemöller. Probably butchering his name, but you can check the name out and look it up. But he said, at first they came and they picked up the socialists. He said, I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't speak up. Next, they came for the trade unionist. And I wasn't a trade unionist, so I didn't speak up. Next, they came for the Jews. And since I'm not Jewish, I didn't speak up. And then they came for me. And when they came for me, there was no one to speak up for me. Now, this is the point of this video. This is what I want to share with anyone who's listening. And unlike any other time in my production of videos, I really urge you guys to share this video, just so anybody who feels like they have a faction or a place or a fight in this degradation of our country and is standing back while they vilify those who were once deified as heroes, think about what you want this country to be. You have to understand what you're ushering in. What they've done in this country, what the propaganda machine has done, is you simply have to look at the heroes. When they want the public support for going and bombing a country up, then they make movies about soldiers, and soldiers are heroes. They're the greatest, and the greatest thing. They're the protectors of our freedoms. We have flyovers, we have parades, we have all these things. While the war machine was while the United States was being used as the bully for the real puppet masters, that's what Hollywood was producing. That's what they wanted us. They wanted us to generate this warrior mentality, this acceptance of the consistent wars. And that's what they've done throughout history. All the war movies have been made to propagandize those movements, those things, and they've never really talked about what was happening in the background. It's all to get the people to be on board with that movement. It's the same thing that they did with the doctors and nurses. Just look at what they did. Look at what they did last year when all of this popped off and all the TikTok and doctors and nurses were vaulted as heroes. Now, this is the thing that I want you to understand. Anytime they vault anyone as heroes, you have to understand that behind that push, behind that propaganda, is usually something sinister. Because just like they propped the veterans and the patriots up while we were going over there to Afghanistan, now that the masters have decided to move these pieces on the chessboard, Now, all of a sudden, those very same patriots, those very same heroes, those very same men and women who put their lives on the line to go over here and what they believed in are now being vilified. They're now being compared to the same people that they were sent over there to fight. And the American public, the people that don't think for themselves, are biting onto the hook and running away with it. They're not questioning this narrative. It's the same thing with the doctors and nurses that are being fired for not wanting to take part in the Resident Evil trials. So instead of jumping on that bandwagon and pointing at those people and listening to the propaganda narrative, a thinking person would have to stop and go, why would someone who's up front and close, like front line on this, why would they choose not to do this? What would make these people risk their livelihood to not do this? Instead of people thinking rationally and logically about that, they just grab their pitchforks and their torches and go after whoever their favorite media outlet tells them to. And as long as they're going after those people over there, as long as they're attacking those people over there and not your pocket of whatever ism that you got back, whatever you back, if you don't back freedom and the Constitution and personal liberties and rights, if you don't believe in those things and you've got a faction and you want to tear it all down and you buy into this narrative, then you are one of the useful idiots. But this is the thing that people don't understand that are part of these factions. Historically, when that regime is done using those people to destabilize and destroy a culture, those are the first ones to get lined up. And so when you look at this thing and you feel like you have a fight, again, I implore you to look at this. It doesn't matter what wing of the bird you choose to tear off, or if you're in the middle or wherever. We're supposed to be Americans. We're supposed to be Americans, and we're supposed to stand for something. We're supposed to stand on some sort of moral principle. Our patriotism is the one thing that is one of the few things that have kept this country afloat. Now, they have ripped away the fabric of this, and now what they're doing, especially with the parents, this should absolutely both horrify and infuriate American citizens. For them to put the same label on parents who don't want their children experimented on. They don't want their children put on medicines and blockers that they don't agree with. They don't want their children to be operated on without their consent and knowledge, or even or anything, or be taught that they're inferior or better than someone. It's people that are simply want their children to go to school and learn how to do math and science and do things that school's supposed to be. Those people are now being labeled the same classification as the people who flew those planes into the buildings. And Americans are buying this? Are we really going to allow this? Because this is what people need to understand. This is what everyone who's cheering for those over there, the unpoked, they should be done this way. Those parents who stand against this, they should be done this way. Everyone who has a stance, who thinks that those people should be treated a certain way, this is what I want you to look at. This is what I want you to consider. This is what I want you to know. The people that they're vilifying right now, the veterans who believe in the Constitution, the veterans who have said that they wouldn't fire on American citizens, the veterans who stand and believe in the oath that they took, all of those people since the Obama era, all of these people have pretty much been expelled from the military. That has been completely destroyed. It has been completely destroyed, and that has been infiltrated by the same powers that have taken over the government and tried to make the things that shouldn't be made mainstream. But here's the problem with allowing and cheering on these attacks. Those people, those veterans, those doctors and nurses that stood front line without taking the poke, that stood and fought against this terrible, evil, Resident Evil apocalypse. Those people that believed and stood on what they believed in, how they felt, what they saw. And people who believe in the American flag, people who believe in the Constitution, people who believe that their children should go to school to learn things that we are behind in our country. This whole equity movement, all of this, anyone who's cheering on that, you are cheering for your own destruction. That's what you're doing. And for you to cheer on the people who have the balls to stand up and stand for what they believe in, and you believe the Kool-Aid, the Jim Jones Kool-Aid that the propaganda machine feeds you about those people are the problem, even though you can look at what's going on in Israel and several other countries where they're highly poked and fully protected, they're still expiring. If you can't look at all the factual things, if you can't look at that, what will happen in this country is they will round up and they will exterminate everybody who will be there, who you would hope to be there when you're crying for help, when that boot comes crashing down on your neck. If it happens to them, it happens to you. And if we sit back like Martin did, and they go and swoop up the veterans because they convinced you that these people who believe in their oath are crazy, and you do nothing because you're not a veteran. They come and scoop up the doctors and nurses that are telling the truth, and you do nothing because your doctor told you something else. They come scoop up all of the people who are willing to stand for what this country was supposed to be built on. As we cheer on these extractions, these terminations, those are going to be the very people that you wish were there to help you when that boot drops on your neck. My whole point in trying to get men to rise up isn't to try to get anyone to see things the way that I see them or believe what I believe or any of that. It's just to see reality. To see reality and to understand that what's going on, it is legit. There's no theory that should be attached to the conspiracy. All of these things are played out. They're being played out, and they're not even trying to hide the truth anymore. They no longer give a shit if you think you're free or not. As a matter of fact, the whole goal is to beat your ass into submission and make you a slave. That's all this is. That's all this is. And you can think that this is crazy talk, it's gloom and doom and all that. Call it what you want. Call it what you want. But everything that we see, from the food shortages, these power outages, all of these things that are happening, all the things that they've done has been to beat this country and the rest of the world into submission. Look at what they're doing in Australia. Look at what they're doing in Australia. That's the model. Is that what you want to live in? Is that what you want America to be? Because in that America, all you purple hair, fight for your right, let's go back to Jim Crow day, all of you people, if they don't line you up on the wall, the voice that you think that you have, it will be silenced. And if you continue to push, you continue to try to make your point after the masters have taken over the play completely, you will see the same fate as those that you cheer right now because propaganda and bullshit tell you to do so. My point is this. Men, it's time to stop this PC game being played. This emotionality, share your feelings. There's been an overcorrection. There's been an overcorrection on every ist and ism that we have. And men of all colors, all religion, it doesn't matter. I don't care what team you claim, what color shirt you have on. I don't care about any of that. This is a push to put the whole world under the thumb of a few. And us fighting us against them is exactly what they want. It's exactly what they need. Because these tiny cowards can't do anything if all their cattle just stop grazing. If we stop living this parasitic consumer lifestyle, grazing nonstop, keeping them rich while the middle class dies. We don't have to play this game. The people who have power because we've given it to them. Living your life on these social media apps, especially men, What are you doing? What are you doing? Like online bullying, the only thing that you have to do to make that go away is turn it off. Turn off the propaganda machine. Go out and talk to your neighbors. Discuss with one another what kind of world you want to live in, what kind of country you want this to be. Because if we allow these people to build it back the way that they consider better, better to them is everyone on this planet owning nothing and bending the knee to them and being happy about it. I'll never be happy about being a fucking slave.